Now, beaver dens I had heard of, however, I had never found any. Until now. I am not sure this particular beaver spot was like normal though, as even my high leveled ardent avis struggled against the oncoming onslaught, and it appeared a lot more difficult than I was expecting. But now that you've liked the video and subscribed, let's get straight into this episode. Today, I decided that we needed to start creating new buildings on our complex, as we had a blacksmith's, but this was being taken up by the animals I was harvesting eggs from. So instead of doing the normal thing of starting work on the hatchery, I instead turned my attention to another building needed. I thought it made sense to at least start the greenhouse, so that the crops would have time to grow as the hatchery was being built up. So as always with these types of things, we headed out smashing up rocks and trees and harvesting everything in sight, even having little berry breaks to keep the supply of narcotics topped up, and whilst back at base, collecting all the eggs I could and begin on the building of the foundations. I'm not sure if I'm just unprepared most of the time, but I'm always finding myself short on materials when building, and even more so when laying down the foundations or building up the walls. The same happened here, so back and forth I went until my stone foundation shape of 8 was placed, leaving me enough room for 4 plots each for each seed, and then 2 plots in the middle for my hives, whenever I got round to finding some. For the greenhouse parts of the build, you obviously need crystal and metal, which of course we had very little of, as I only found 1 small vein, but on top of that, our metal supply was low. So this was next on my list of things to do. Flying around, there was plenty to gather, and we would be flowing in ingots again in no time. But this is when I looked over and saw these large beaver dens. The smaller bundle of sticks I had seen, but not these structures. So I went in, sneaking in as I had no idea what I was doing, until I peeked inside, taking all of the cementing paste, rare flowers and mushrooms, before leaping over the oncoming beavers, swimming away whilst being chomped. This is where the flak comes in clutch. Without understanding how, but not asking any questions, I had made it back onto Opal and decided to stand and fight the horde, as surely I could take these guys on easily, right? 1 or 2 of course, even 10. But there was so many here that I could not count, and just as I had finished off a wave, or it looked like their numbers were dwindling, more and more kept swimming up out of the lake, and once they were dealt with finally, I went over to steal more wood, as there were no more beavers around. But this was a trap. There were still so many beavers, and lots of them, so once I got my wood and stood to fight them more so, they pushed me and Opal off the rock and into the water again, throwing me into the lake and desperate to find a way back onto my bird. Once again, I was somehow able to find my way back on to mount my RG, but they were still coming. One after the other, and sometimes all at once, as even Opal looked like she was struggling. However, finally, after such a long fight, and the massacre of all local beavers, surely, I stole all I could from the rest of the dens before taking it back home to use up on any new buildings. I flew back down once again to collect more wood that was too heavy for me to do so at once, but by some miracle, all of the beavers were back, and there were so many more of them still attacking, so we had to stay, carrying on fighting, until I decided that it was time to grab all that I could and just fly out of there for good, bring it all back home, and try once again to take out my Dimorphodons, in the hopes of getting my queens from the hives. Just like before though, there was still none. No matter how many I took out, I was still left empty-handed, with nothing to show other than the levels on my Dimorphs. So instead, I flew them back before looking for some crystal. However, after a while of finding none of that either, I decided to let Opal rest for now and call it a night. But if you'd like to see more of me inside of ARK, be sure to catch up on the previous episodes or my live streams